Brought to you by Lean Body, the #1 protein shake in gyms across America. Brought to you by Lean Body, the #1 protein shake in gyms across America.
What's going on, everyone? My name is Ben. I teach people about the anatomy of lifting. It's basically going to be a crunch on a chest press. So maybe you're someone who doesn't like to lie on the floor, maybe you don't want to do the cable things, maybe it just feels weird. This is a great alternative. Find something to put behind your back. So this is an ab mat. It's shaped according to the shape of the spine, but you can use a towel, an extra shirt, a sweatshirt, or anything. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna put it below the portions of the upper spine, right? So basically, like if you have 3 segments of your spine, you think about upper, middle, and lower, you're gonna put it basically like right in the middle lower sort of section. So Liv is gonna scoot back up against the pad, make sure that her back is nice and flush against it. And then before the motion even starts, she's just gonna press the weight out, just like any other sort of normal chest press. And what she's gonna do is she's essentially gonna use the weight on her hands that is, in essence, pushing her entire spine and her shoulders backward to do a crunch against it. So what Liv is gonna do is just like we did in the sort of normal cable crunch, she's gonna close these 2 points together. And as she does that, she's gonna think about smooshing her back into that pad. So there's a lot of pressure back here behind my hand. And as she comes forward, she's gonna basically close this gap as much as she can. She's pushing it back into my hand. And also what you'll notice is as she comes forward, she's really emphasizing reaching against the handle. So if there's any kind of motion that's really gonna train the internal oblique, the external oblique, and the 6-pack muscles all at the same time, it's just gonna be a sort of forward bending motion. And this is a really simple, easy way to sort of load that motion with, again, something that could just be as simple as a sweatshirt or a towel or something similar. So the last thing to kind of note here too is if you are on a chest press machine and when you get tired you can relax, and your feet end up sort of dangling like that, you can move the seat lower. That's an easy option because you might be a little bit more stable. But if your feet dangling is fun, then you can dangle your feet and it's no problem. So another fantastic exercise for all the abs, but mainly these 6-pack muscles, is just gonna be the traditional hanging leg raise. But the traditional hanging leg raise runs into one major issue, which is that it kind of becomes this thing where floating back and forth, it's a little bit difficult to stabilize. So Liv, if you could just demo a couple of those reps, if you get a little bit out of control, sort of what ends up happening. Yeah, it's like the whole trunk kind of moves backward. It ends up being a lot of hip flexors and not a ton of abs. So if you have a Smith machine, or if you have just a regular barbell, what you can do is pull this up. If you have a pad, that would be great, because sometimes this bar alone can be uncomfortable. You could wrap a towel, a shirt, a sweatshirt around here, but we're gonna use this nice pad. You can use this as a brace for your back. So Liv is gonna hop up here one more time. And what she's gonna really make sure of is that she does not lose contact. I'm gonna lower this one. With this pad the whole time. So if you can kind of see where it is on her back, it's basically just right above her butt on her lower spine. And as she comes up, she's really gonna make sure that this stays nice and in contact the whole time. Really, really slow reps, slow eccentrics, really milk that eccentric. And much in the same way that we were doing crunches with the cable down this way, we're thinking about opening the ribs, closing the ribs up to the top. As you go through that motion, if you find that you're sort of losing contact with the pad, what you'll notice is that if you slow down, that contact will sort of be much more strong. And you don't have to worry as much about sort of swinging backward and forth, sort of losing output through the target tissue. Now, in addition, if your grip does happen to be an issue, where you're grabbing maybe a bar that's a little bit wider or something like that, a great idea would be to invest in a pair of those straps that we mentioned earlier in the video. Cheap on Amazon. You could buy a pair probably for, I don't know, under $20, $30 or something like that. And you can loop that around whatever you're raising on, so you just have that elbow support, so you don't have to worry about anything grip related. All right, so the last option we're gonna go over is just a side bend off of the 45-degree hyperextension. Most gyms have this machine, so it's a great option, very convenient, and you don't need a ton of weight, but if you do need weight, dumbbells are an easy option to add load. A pure side bend motion, we went over a lot of that sort of hyper-specific anatomy stuff, is gonna be great for both of the obliques, because as we mentioned, if Liv turns, so this is again gonna be that external oblique. Recall that the internal oblique is gonna run this way, like this. And so what that means is that when each of these things are gonna pull, they're gonna create a downward direction of force. And that's just basically gonna side bend her right to the side, right? So both of those things, because they're gonna cross over on that side of the hip, are gonna sort of pull you in either direction this way. So what we're gonna do to set up is Liv is gonna put both of her feet underneath of the pad facing one direction. We're gonna start with the right side. And when she hops in here, what you're gonna notice with this particular height is that this pad ends up right sort of below or at the level of her hip joint. And just an easy way to tell sort of where your hips are, just basically grab the bones, right? So this big bone here is called the ilium bone. You're gonna go just beneath that and slightly inward. That's where your hip is. So if you find that the pad is sort of in line with that, that means it's a little bit too low. We need to pull it up so that we have a little bit more stability and a little bit more support on the abs. So I'm just gonna guess here, 2 settings, so hop in. All right, so that's probably about good. Right around like the top of her hip is where we want, because again, most of this motion should be coming from the spine. The hips we want to keep still, and to keep them still, we gotta anchor them on a pad. So when Liv comes down, she's basically gonna do what we did over on the cables. She's gonna let all this spread really, really far apart, and then she's just gonna close these 2 gaps together. Sorry. She's gonna close these 2 gaps together as she comes up. Right, and leading with the elbow is a great idea. You can think about your shoulders as sort of doing this teeter-totter thing. In either case, again, all those principles are the same. We're really just focused on moving the ribs away from and then toward the pelvis as we go through this motion. As I mentioned earlier, super easy to add load, super easy to progress this. I could just put a dumbbell or a small plate in Liv's left hand here, come to the ground, and then back up. If this motion is too hard for you, meaning it's like you're just doing your body weight and you're like, holy cannoli, there's no way I'm ever gonna be able to do more than like a couple reps, something that you can do is you can take both of your arms and then hold them sort of to one side of your body, right? So see, when Liv did that, she kind of turned. We wanna make sure she stays this way, but her arms are gonna stay sort of suspended here. She can also, if it's more comfortable, put this arm here and that arm here. And what that's gonna do is just gonna distribute more weight sort of toward this side of her body, so that it's not as difficult as she comes down, right? So in essence, there's just less load suspended away from her. Now, conversely, if you wanted to make it harder, but you didn't have a bunch of extra weight, what we could do is we could move the arms all the way over here, right? And you feel how much harder that gets immediately, right? So it's basically just about managing how much weight do you suspend away from this point as you go through the crunching motion on either side. One side may feel more difficult than the other. That's perfectly normal and to kind of be expected. What I would recommend in that case is just to start with the weaker side and then match reps with your stronger side, and eventually those things tend to sort of work themselves out. And if they don't, just make sure that you're doing hard sets on either side. It's probably not a big deal anyway. All right, everyone, this was Ben and Liv signing off. Hopefully you appreciated that video. Maybe you learned something. If you did, give it a like, give it a share, give it a comment, and stay tuned for our next video where we're gonna talk about everything related to glute training.